We got a lot to talk about today, guys. The in-season tournament, the Celtics losing to the Pacers, the Milwaukee Bucks beat down on the New York Knicks, and then that controversial ending to a Lakers versus Suns game late at night in LA. There's so much to dive into. There's so much to talk about. All right, guys, what's going on? And welcome back into, I guess, technically the first episode of Around the Hardwood, even though it's our second time recording. The first one, something happened. It went wrong. Downloaded the file incorrectly. But so I guess this is technically our first episode. Welcome in. It is our new weekly show where we'll be getting a wider variety of basketball. We'll talk all the league, all the teams, all the players. However, we will have our Celtics section of the show. But guys, before I get started, I just want to say, if you're not following us on social media, do that right now. Follow us on our Instagram at Celtics Talk Weekly, our Twitter at Celtics_weekly, and you can find everything down below in the description. However, let's get ourselves started with that first in-season tournament game on Monday night between the Celtics and the Pacers. Boston fell 122-112, a little bit closer than the final score says. The Pacers just kind of ran away with it in the last minute 30. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, get this, guys, both scored 30 points. It's the second time in the Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum era in which they both score 30 points and the Celtics lose. The last time that happened was last year in December against the Cleveland Cavaliers. That game went into overtime. Should the Celtics be concerned moving forward with their inability to execute in a game that truly mattered, guys?
I don't know. I don't know if we should really be concerned right now. I think the bigger concern is the second half adjustments as a whole, in my opinion, especially when it comes to right after halftime going into the beginning of the third quarter. It seems like every time they eventually let up 10-0 run to the opposing team to start the quarter, and they always seem to lose momentum after that. And it's kind of annoying to see. But I think that's the Celtics' biggest problem. And the fact that they always kind of seem to crumble a little bit when it comes to playing under pressure at the end of the game is also an issue. But that kind of just ties into the rest of the second half adjustments I think the Celtics need to make.
Well, they currently stand at the bottom of the league in the third quarter points scored. They're 25.3 point per game third quarters is the worst. This third quarter against the Indiana Pacers, 37 points from Indiana to 24 points from Boston. Is this a coaching problem? Is this a performance problem? Or is it a mix of both? Where do the problems lie in the Celtics third quarter struggles, Seamus?
It's a complete mix of both when you whittle it down to the entirety of the team. But I will say at this point in the season, for as much slack as we've given Joe Mazzulla on our post games, I do want to reel it back just a little bit and put a little bit more blame on the players. Because here's the thing. Yes, we talk about Ime Udoka left. The intensity kind of left the building with him just a little bit. Maybe Marcus Smart as well over the summer. And Ian mentioned it, in these third quarters, the team faces adversity, faces a lot of competition, a lot of speed, strength, intensity from other teams, other young teams. And in those moments, they're not able to respond the same way we saw the Celtics respond 2 years ago with a different roster. And we know that roster 2 years ago, that so far is the golden standard of what we need to see, because that team had all of the elements to win the NBA Finals and simply ran out of gas near the end. That team was very intense, showed up to play, showed up in moments of adversity, and responded to moments of adversity, particularly bad losses in which they didn't have too many of. The team this year, we've seen in Orlando, in Indiana, in Philadelphia, in many other scenarios too, in games in which we've won. We think about the Toronto game. A lot of these games, the Celtics, they completely lose their footing, particularly in the third quarter. And I don't feel personally, I don't feel from the team that there is this outwardly want to come back in the game and win. It almost feels like, oh, here we go again. We've done it again. And most of the time it looks very hectic when they try and insert themselves back into these games, because it's a lot of forced shots, a lot of turnovers, a lot of not zoning in and locking in on defense when they need to. The team needs to. And 2 years ago, even 3 years ago now, when Brad Stevens was in the coaching slot, I would particularly blame the players for the motivational standpoint. But then I want to say it's a little unfair to now sit back and say, okay, well, now it's Joe Mazzulla. He's supposed to be getting these players motivated, because at the end of the day, these guys have paid millions of dollars to play basketball. And if you cannot properly get yourself motivated, that's on yourself. It's not up to anyone else. And I do think there is a coaching aspect of that. There's a coaching aspect of motivation, and of course with scheming out on court as well. And that's really what I look at in regards to Joe Mazzulla. However, players, in terms of their intensity and motivation, I want to see them be better. And we know that some guys on this team, we'll see if they can do this independently, but we know that they can bring that intensity every single game. We're just not seeing it consistently at this point in the season. And I do chalk a little bit of that up to the fact we are early portion of December. We saw 2 years ago, Jason Tatum was an absolute disaster before almost pulling out an MVP campaign out of his butt 2 years ago when the Celtics almost made the finals. I mean, we really think about that early portion of the season, complete disaster. Tatum and Brown, particularly Tatum, did not look well. And then the latter half, that's when the intensity came out. So I'm still waiting, still seeing to, whether or not this is an early season type of thing. And we know teams sometimes do not necessarily bring it every single night. But with the Celtics, I want to start seeing them do all the little things to build themselves towards a championship, because the competition is so rigorous this season. And the team cannot own a mentality of, okay, we're here, we're one of the best teams in the league, we're paid, we're good, we're going to go out there and play basketball. No, it's going to have to be, we want to go out there and win. These other teams, particularly the other night against the Indiana Pacers, we saw against Tyrese Halliburton, what did he say? The team wants to win. He wants to win. That's how these young teams are approaching the game. The Celtics, they're paid, they've won a lot of games, but they haven't won the whole thing. So for me, they still have to do the little things, and it comes with bringing that intensity every single game with them everywhere they go, no matter whether that they're at the Garden, which up to this point they're 9-0, great, but on the road they're 6-5. We want to see them face the adversity on the road and respond. So far, the team has lacked in that department, but it is December, and I will say moving forward, I do have a little bit of confidence that will turn around.
I think that when I look at the situation, I think there's definitely some blame for Mazzulla. I think the coach definitely has a responsibility to get your team ready, get the players ready, coming out of half, good game plan, good rotations. Obviously, the players have to execute that. So I think there's two sides to this. One, Mazzulla is trying that and the players aren't executing it, or Mazzulla isn't making adjustments and isn't getting them ready, and the players just are following the lead of their head coach. Here's my problem with that. When you trade a guy like Marcus Smart, who was faulted by me for being the leader of the team, not being the best player, the lead comes from Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And I've been a big advocate of when your team's not winning and your team's not having success, the finger gets pointed to your best players. I think if this continues, I think the finger needs to start getting pointed at Brown and Tatum, because, listen, you guys are the two best players. The team follows your lead. If you're turning the ball over, if your body language isn't in it, if you're not playing the right way, your team's gonna follow you. And obviously, Al Horford's a great leader. They have these guys that can lead. Drew Holiday's been there. Derek White's they have these talents, but at the end of the day, the two best players should be the two guys. You saw Halliburton, you saw Buddy Hield. They wanted it. They were oozing energy and just in aggressiveness. And obviously they're at home. It's much easier to do that at home than on the road. But Game 6, Jason Tatum against the Milwaukee Bucks, do we remember that? It was just like a killer mentality. And I think it will be there in the playoffs. These guys want to win. I just think in terms of positioning yourself to get good habits in a good seed and, good placement and rolling, because the playoffs, a lot of it is who's hot, right? Who's hot to come playoff time, and I do think that Brown and Tatum have to be better. And there's just no question about that, Franco.
Yeah, definitely. They were the full investment for this team. They really put the whole bank in on a championship this year. Wick Grosbeck made that very clear. We have dealt with disappointment the past 4 years, and now it's Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum's teams, and there's no dispute about it. When they are, when it comes down to playoff time, it's going to be Jaylen Brown, if he's going to be able to lead this team on and off the court, be that vocal leader since Marcus Smart is gone. And what the team did during this offseason was gave up heart for talent. And Kristaps Porzingis, Drew Holiday, there's no doubt about their skills and no doubt about how competitive they make this team. When this team is at its healthiest, there should be no really any team that we could beat in a 7-game series in the league.
Without a doubt.
I mean, I just really think that it's going to come down to getting to that point where everyone is on the same pathway, and it starts with the little things. Who's going to start laying out on the ground for the ball? Drew Holiday, when we saw the Milwaukee Bucks win that championship, he was that guy for the Milwaukee Bucks when with Giannis and Chris Middleton. He was the one laying out on the ground, getting the assists, setting up the star players to get into position to score. And we're going to see a lot of that from Kristaps, and Al Horford brings another layer of leadership on and off the court as a veteran who has been in the league for many years and still hasn't gotten that championship. And we don't know how much time he has left in the league, even though he's still playing at a high efficiency. But nothing's guaranteed in this league, so this year has to be the one.
I think that as a whole, the Celtics are in a phenomenal position to succeed. Again, how much stock, that's been my thing recently. How much stock are you putting into these games, these regular season games? And I think some games you should put zero stock into. Trap games, second nights of back-to-back against a dwindling playoff team who one night's hot, one night's not. You know, you don't put a lot of stock into that game. A game on a Friday night at 7:30 at home versus the Milwaukee Bucks, you put some stock into that game. In game 45 versus the LA Lakers on the road on ESPN, you put stock into that game because those games hold deeper meaning and show you more of what a team's truly made of. The intensity's higher. There's more to it. How much stock do I put into a game on the road, on prime time, in season tournament? I put a decent amount, but not a whole lot. It's a little early. If the midseason tournament was truly at the midway point, games 40, like 38 to 42 were the in-season tournament, I'd put a whole lot more stock into it because that's a whole extra quarter of the season that a team can truly get down. I just think it's too early into the year for me to really be worried about the Celtics' performance in what is a win-or-go-home game. The playoffs is best of 7, first to 4. And I still believe that no team in the NBA is beating the Celtics, 4 out of 7 times. I still think that. So we will see where that goes with the Boston Celtics. But we did have a big time matchup. We had the games last night were interesting. First off, I got to talk about this Bucks beatdown on New York. The Milwaukee Bucks beat the New York Knicks 146 to 122. Get this, guys. I have a little stat for you. The Bucks scored 37 plus points in 3 quarters against the New York Knicks. Does anyone? All right. The last time that happened, someone walked into Madison Square Garden and scored 100 points. Wilt Chamberlain. That is the first time a New York Knicks basketball team has allowed 37 plus points in 3 quarters since Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game. What the Milwaukee Bucks did last night to the New York Knicks was by definition historic. Some stat breakdown I want to skew out there. New York shot 7 of 23 from beyond the arc. Milwaukee shot 23 of 38, which equates to about 63%, I want to say. Giannis, 35, 8, and 10. Dame, 28, and 7. And Randall had 41.
Crazy.
You know what's the funniest part about that game is the
What?
fact Tom Thibodeau said no one played well afterwards, and
Right.
Julius Randle had 41. Like in 41, no one played well. They lost.
So this is my thing with Milwaukee, and I think we saw it. They can shoot the ball at an extremely high clip. 23 of 36. That offense, when it gets moving, it gets moving. New York still put up 122 points. I mean, when you score 146 and you only win by 20, that's something I'm noting. It's not saying Milwaukee isn't great, because I do still think they're one of the 4 best teams, guys, but could this Milwaukee defense, I mean, to allow to 122 points while a team only makes 4 3-pointers or 7 3-pointers, that could be I know you won and your offense did it for you, but you're not shooting 60% from 3 every night. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, but I find it kind of funny because like the Bucks game plan in that game against the Knicks was pretty much let's shoot as many threes as we can, let's hit them at a 60% clip, and let's just out offense the other team, which is something the Celtics try to do sometimes, which is kind of a funny thing. But
Right.
I think the difference is Milwaukee, I don't really think is built to shoot like that as much as the Celtics are. So, I mean, even though they have Damian Lillard, who I think can do that, it's going to be kind of interesting to see because I don't really know what the Bucks are. They're still trying to find their identity, and offensively they look pretty good, but I feel like eventually in a playoff setting against a team like Boston or Miami or maybe even Orlando, the defense could come back and hurt Milwaukee.
Well, something that Charles Barkley said at halftime, which I really agreed with. Randall had 25 points at half. He was 9-9 at perfect shooting. There's a real defensive problem in Milwaukee because you can't match up Giannis against a guy like Julius Randle or a guy like, Jimmy Butler or those top-notch guys, Jason Tatum, whoever it may be, Joel Embiid. He's going to get into foul trouble, and you can't have your superstar in foul trouble. And that's a problem that is happening in the NBA. The best player can't always guard the best player for 48 minutes because, a lot of the times they're going to find themselves in foul trouble. Okay, so you can't put Giannis on him. Where do you go? And I think that is where Milwaukee needs to figure it out. And if they, just like how Boston needs to figure out their bench depth, right? Where do you go defensively with this basketball team? Because Malik Beasley can't do it. Damian Lillard can't do it. Lopez can do it. But if you stretch Lopez out, it gets really tough for him to do it. And that's not on him. And Giannis, he can do it. But at the same time, Giannis is more of a roamer. He's not really an on-ball defender. And if we've seen what happens, to Giannis when you put him in the pick and roll and you get that faster matchup. So I think defensively, Milwaukee has some real searching to do. And if they can figure it out, I think they'll be good. But, right now we look at Milwaukee, guys, and how much of a threat are they in the Eastern Conference or in the NBA? Because if you look at mismatches, Seamus, where does Milwaukee stand right now in terms of, are they in contention? Obviously they're in contention, but are they favorites? Are they top dogs? Where are they at?
Well, I find it interesting how we tend to rank teams every single season because I just saw someone's list. I believe actually, I'll give him a shout out. I believe it was NBA Central's list of, it was a tier list, right?
I saw that.
And I'm not
too, yeah.
calling his tier list wrong or anything. I actually thought it was quite correct, but every single year we rank teams and tiers and rankings, relative to where their standing is in the standings, what the record is. There's a team out there, I believe, in the Eastern Conference that completely goes against this every single year. I think you guys know which team I'm talking about. It's the Miami Heat. They're 6th, 7th seed right now. I would put them ahead of the Milwaukee Bucks right now, no matter where the Bucks finish in seed. We saw it last year. 1 versus 8. 1 versus 8. And at the end of the day, the 8th seed wins game 1. All of a sudden, the 8th seed now has home court. So 1 versus 8, even under those circumstances, Miami was able to pull out a series against Milwaukee. And I really do believe that even with how the standings look, there are going to be teams just like Miami who are inevitably going to be tough competition. And I look at another team, the Pacers, who are like this. And I really do wonder if we're in an era of the NBA where right now I don't know if this regular season trend is going to continue in the playoffs or not, but teams are essentially, and Milwaukee is one of these teams. I would go Milwaukee, Indiana, Atlanta, Sacramento. These are the teams in this category who are pretty well gambling every single game on running the floor, shooting a high volume of threes at a high clip, and scoring in transition while also trying to prevent a little bit of transition opportunities. And then off of that too, a lot of these teams are just straight up not going for rebounds offensively. And I believe with some of the numbers that are cast upon the board from the league, I do think teams are figuring out a new style of how to play potentially. And it comes with gambling by not really, focusing too hard on the defensive end. And part of that is teams are playing real fast. And I wonder how this plays out at the end of the year, how some of these teams fare in the playoffs, because this could be a situation where, almost 10 years ago now, the Warriors, they were really the first team to shoot a high volume of threes. And people went, okay, well, the Warriors, they're not going to be able to win a championship doing that. They're not going to be able to win a championship shooting three after three after three. Well, they formed a dynasty off of it. And now people are saying, well, you can't win a championship with a bottom 10 defense. Well, teams who are playing fast, particularly Indiana, Milwaukee, Sacramento, Atlanta. Now, Atlanta, I don't know, I might exclude from that conversation just a little bit. But these teams are ultimately so offensively powered that I wonder if they can get teams to play their style of play, that they will simply just score more points over time. And we've seen in the playoffs, it does turn into a more half-court setting in the NBA typically.
Oh, yeah, much
and
slower,
I do
much
believe
slower.
that's what could stifle these teams in the end, Milwaukee and Indiana. However, I do wonder if Milwaukee, even though we're looking at their defense going, is that a defense of a top contender? Because recently, and in the half court, they aren't. They really aren't. They're not, to me, they do not have the defense of a championship level team whatsoever. And I do look at a team like Miami and even New York as more championship ready teams or opponents against us. But I do also wonder if the way Milwaukee's playing, the way Indiana's playing, Atlanta, Sacramento, some of these teams right now, these teams, I wonder if they can play their play style and get other teams to play their play style, if the defense even matters. Because at playoffs, they are a half-court setting, but I do believe if a team wants to try and get themselves out of the mud and continuously push that philosophy, they possibly could come playoff time, possibly could. And under those circumstances, you would certainly factor in Milwaukee as somebody hugely in contention. But I will say, I think it comes with the caveat of it has to be within line of this new style of play we're really seeing, or this enhanced up and down style of play that we're seeing. And I don't think it would be more in a traditional format at all. I think it would have to be more of, and then under those circumstances, I would think Indiana would be a contender as well. So
here's my problem with that.
Level it out.
My problem with that is I think we've seen this before, and I think a fast-paced basketball team is really, really difficult to game plan against in an 82-game season, where it's like, okay, guys, we're on a flight. We got to come up. How do we want to stop these guys? Okay, off the basics. Don't let Giannis get into transition, this and that. It's simpler. It's simplified. When you get to the playoffs, it's 7 games. Your focus is on one team 4 times at least. When you have these fast-paced teams, it's simple. Just slow them down. Create longer possessions, take closer shots, limit the amount of times the rebound goes long. I mean, that's pretty simple on how to beat. I mean, obviously, it's a little bit more complicated when they're doing it at an NBA level, but off the basics, you're given an opportunity in the playoffs to say, okay, listen, this team plays fast. This is how we're going to approach it. The game slows down. each possession holds way more value in the playoffs. You're not seeing teams put up 140. And I think an example of this last season, you saw the Sacramento Kings, the highest scoring offense in the NBA, go up against a Golden State Warriors team that really was not playoff ready. They had the drama with Jordan Poole and Draymond Green. They had the greatness of Steph Curry, obviously. And then they have a dwindling Klay Thompson that's kind of fizzling out with an Andrew Wiggins guys who missed more than half the season due to personal reasons. And his headspace really wasn't in basketball. I do think obviously there is a side of experience that played a huge factor into the Warriors, obviously going on and win that game 7 in Sacramento. However, my point being is that in the playoffs, you can't really play, and maybe I'm a disbeliever, but you can't play this fast branded basketball because statistically speaking and historically speaking, it suggests that you're just not going to shoot the ball an extremely high enough clip over 7 games in order to successfully come out on top with an NBA championship. I mean, we've seen it with the Houston Rockets and Mike D'Antoni's 7-second offense or 12 seconds? 7-second, right? 7-second offense. We've seen it with he tried it in Phoenix. It didn't work out there. He tried it in Houston. It didn't work out there. I mean, we've seen it before. And again, I'm not a huge believer in it. And in a season tournament game where it's, one and done, it will work because at the end of the day, you're not really game planning as much for it as you are in an NBA final or an NBA playoff game. But I think it will be interesting. I think that's worth noting, Seamus, is how you're seeing more teams in the NBA be like, all right, play fast, off the rebound, a lot more threes. Guess what that means? It means transition opportunities and long rebounds. I mean, long outlet passes, which means easy points and using the numbers on 3-on-2 fast breaks. So I do think there's that aspect. So who do we like then, guys? Indiana or Milwaukee in this Vegas game? Because honestly, I'm not going to lie. The way Milwaukee played last night against New York, if it's offense versus offense, Milwaukee's got Giannis, they got Dame. I think they make the plays down the stretch.
I'm going to take Milwaukee in this. I'm feeling confident in them. Even though Indiana is coming off a really, really hot stretch and they were playing with a lot of energy, but I believe now it's going over to Vegas, so that home court advantage has disappeared. So it's going to be, I feel like Giannis, and this is what we kind of wanted to see from the Celtics, is to see them step up in this big time atmosphere. And I feel like Milwaukee will be able to be more acclimated to the challenge because they're such a tenured team. And as you guys were saying before, a lot of these young and upcoming teams, they're knocking right on the door, and it's kind of a shift of the window. I mean, Milwaukee, Philly, Miami, and it's a little too early to consider us in that same category, but a lot of their contracts are starting to get older and a lot of their players are starting to become more seasoned and injuries happen over time. So windows are closing on these teams, but I feel like after seeing Milwaukee's performance against New York, which is one of those teams that's knocking on the door of Milwaukee, I feel like the Bucks are going to be able to pull this out, and we're going to see a really good game in the in-season tournament final.
When it comes to the in-season tournament, I disagree. I think the Pacers are going to beat the Bucks. I don't know what it is. It's just one of those feelings where it just feels like the Pacers are just going to be that team that makes it all the way and wins it. They just feel like they care about this. They legitimately care about this. Like they want this title. And so I don't know. I'm bought in on the Pacers. I think they can beat Milwaukee. Plus, the Pacers play basically the Bucks brand of basketball on steroids. So they play no defense at all. And sure, Milwaukee is going to be able to get to the paint on them. Are they going to be able to stop their offense as great as their offense is? Like, are they going to be able to stop Halliburton and Hield and Bruce Brown and Aaron Nesmith and all of those guys?
Let's not ignore the fact that Rick Carlisle drew up a phenomenal defensive game plan against Boston.
Exactly. And Boston is known as the best team in the NBA. Now, and they didn't have Porzingis, but that's not really an excuse. But exactly, he can scheme ways for the Pacers to win games. And if it ends up being like that game against Atlanta, where it's like 150 to like 140 something, I think that's a very real possibility. But I
Right.
do
No, it
think
is.
the Indiana Pacers have enough to beat Milwaukee.
I think the Indiana Pacers just have the feel to them right now. They just have the
That's what I'm
feel. You
saying.
think about their entire journey. Now, I know that we've all been involved in different championship runs, right? So we all know that there are like moments that happen within championship runs where I'm even getting goosebumps now where you go, there's just no way that
They're
like
losing.
that was like there's no way that wasn't a moment that's going to now propel us forward. Look at Indiana's in-season tournament history right now. Game 1, they go up against the Cavaliers, and that's the first in-season tournament game ever. They play the first in-season tournament game ever in Indiana, the land of basketball. And then later on in the tournament, they go down to Atlanta, have that crazy game. They come back down from 20 points. Tyrese Halliburton goes nuts. And honestly, I still think about that game to this day. 157 to 152. I want to see that every single night, NBA. I want to see that every
Adam
single
Silver's
night.
dream right there.
They go 4-0 in their group stage, and they make the in-season tournament bracket. They're the first team to make it as well. They're the first team to make it. They're the first team to clinch out of any team. And then we see the other night the Celtics, one of the most historic teams in the NBA. They come onto their home floor in Indiana, and that place is just, I mean, absolutely ridiculous. That was a playoff like atmosphere. I was not even factoring in that for the game. Quite frankly, I didn't think that people were going to show out and show up like that for an in-season tournament game, but you could tell the atmosphere within that building was completely different. And there were just a couple of plays in which the Pacers put up against us where it just didn't go our way. Wasn't the Celtics' day. The Tyrese Halliburton 3 at the end, it was 105 to 105, I believe. And it was a 4-point play. That was pretty much the end of our night after that play. And then Aaron Nesmith really putting the exclamation point on it, dunking, not on Al Horford. Al Horford kind of had a chance at it. He was on the back of him, right? But not on Al Horford, but he dunked on pretty much our entire team and did the too little celebration as well in the fourth quarter to Derek White. So everything was going towards Indiana's way. They saw so many moments, the ambiance within their arena, their uniforms. I just feel as if Indiana has that feel to them right now. And not only am I predicting them to win against the Bucks, I'm predicting them to win the entire in-season tournament going forward, because I think from all the moments we've seen from the Indiana Pacers, this might be their year. This might be the in-season year for the Pacers. Not finals, but in-season.
I think that this game has who's making their shots written all over it. Again, it's interesting because how do I address these in-season tournament games? Is it like a playoff game where the best players are going to make the best plays down the stretch? Or is it going to be a scenario where it's the little things? It's Malik Beasley's performance. It's Aaron Nesmith's performance. I mean, we see it even last night. Lakers Suns. Which we're going to talk about. It was Austin Reeves who made the big play down the stretch. So you're seeing. It has more of a regular. It has a much different feel than the NBA playoffs, obviously, being single game elimination and all this other factors. So Bucks Pacers, again, I'm gonna stick with my Milwaukee pick, but you're right. Indiana has a feel to it right now. Tyrese Halliburton is putting the NBA in the league on notice. The Pacers are this year's Sacramento Kings from last year. We are seeing that in front of our eyes. Tyrese Halliburton has taken the jump that De'Aaron Fox took last year, and I think he's maybe taken it a step further from just how well he runs the show. He does it all, and it comes so fluently. When I watch a guy like Luka Doncic, you feel his stats, if that makes sense, right? You know when Luka has 40, you know. When Luka has 10 assists, you know. Last night, or 2 nights ago, excuse me, I was watching the Pacers game, and I'm thinking to myself, oh God, Halliburton's been quiet tonight. I checked the stats. 15 points, 7 rebounds, 8 assists. You're just like, oh, whoa, what? And that's just from how fluent his game is. This dude has really, if you were to ask me, we talked about it last week, my way too early MVP, Tyrese Halliburton, man. I mean, that's how well this dude has been playing. He's playing at an MVP level. I'm here for it. I love it. I think Indiana, not only do they deserve a great basketball team being the home of basketball, but it's just like, that's a dude you can root for. He wants to win. You can tell he's a great teammate, and his just play style is super, super likable. However, let's jump over out west, guys, and we finally get to talk about the West. I'm sick and tired of the East right now, man. We finally get to talk some West. So the Lakers Suns game, it was some controversy down the stretch.
James tosses in for Reeves. Booker is playing with those 5 fouls. So is Durant. Oh, the ball squirts loose.
What are they calling here?
A timeout. The Lakers get a timeout with 7.4 on the clock.
But Ian, the ball was a loose ball. How could it have been a timeout when no one had possession? Let's see when LeBron was calling timeout here. Here's Reeves. When the ball comes out, no one has possession. So how could it be a timeout? When did LeBron call timeout? So let's see when LeBron is calling timeout. If the ball is loose.
Right there.
No, the ball's loose. He can't get that timeout.
The ball was loose. Can we, first of all, can we all, where were we at? Everyone agrees that should not have been a timeout. The Suns should have tied the game, correct?
I believe as Celtics fans, we should probably all agree on this.
Yeah.
No, but like no Celtics fan, like genuinely speaking, because we got to be as non-biased as possible.
But
the ball was out.
The ball was out. There was no way.
Was out.
I don't really understand how they got the timeout call.
Right.
But, you know.
I mean, to me, this is classic caterance. I mean, they want the Lakers in Las Vegas, that is. They're already in Los Angeles. They want the Lakers in Las Vegas. They want LeBron to be a part of the Las Vegas shenanigans. And I think that's ultimately why, they were catering towards the Lakers and not the Suns at certain points last night. And that's I don't want to say it's okay, but at the same time, it's kind of tradition, just in a little bit of a sense. And that could go, if Phoenix was playing a team like, say, Minnesota, they might be favoring more Phoenix. So it's like just who, depending on the matchup, somebody's going to be favored over the other. But I think the funniest part of this entire situation is the fact the Lakers fans continuously on social media, they continuously post inconclusive evidence to prove their point.
It's like, just say you got the call and end it, right? You got the call. You guys won. Admit you got the call and just go about your day. You don't have to, like, who are you kidding? And you know it. That's where I'm at with that. But I will say, so let's do, there was the missed call. But other than that, which again is frustrating because that would have tied the game at 104. And it just feels like, or 105, 104, no, 104 or 10, it was 105 to 105. Yeah, at 103. So it would have tied the game at 105. It just feels like we got cheated. And this is where my problem comes with this type of stuff. And I get it. It's LeBron. When you see LeBron say timeout, you're only really looking at LeBron and not the ball. I do understand that aspect. The dude is, his resume speaks for itself. I just feel as basketball fans, you got cheated out of what could have been a phenomenal overtime, which is frustrating, or a phenomenal ending. Maybe the Lakers, because they would have gotten the ball back, the Suns would have laid it in. And maybe there's a buzzer beater. So, again, I understand it. Everything happens so fast. Personally speaking, I think there needs to be a replay system where end of the game, everything needs to be called correctly, I think, where it's like, okay, they didn't have the ball, Suns basketball, we missed the timeout underneath, right? I think that would have been fair. But let's talk about the game. Lakers Suns. It was a good one. Lakers kind of led all game, and then the Suns kind of made it close towards the second half, midway through that third quarter. KD was great, 31 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. I mean, that's just what KD's been doing really all year long. I mean, people talk about LeBron's longevity, which is, I don't understand it. Kevin Durant's getting almost to that point. Year 16 now, averaging 30 points per game. I mean, that dude has been phenomenal. LeBron, I mean, come on, man. I'm not even a LeBron guy, and he never fails to impress. 31 points, 8 rebounds, 11 assists. D-Book, he struggled. And this is what's funny about this, being a Celtics fan. This Devin Booker game screams bad Jason Tatum game. 21 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists, shooting 37.5%. It's like somewhere I feel like you could look it up, and Jason Tatum has had that exact stat line shooting. I just feel like every time Tatum has a bad game, right? Right? Like that's just very Jason Tatum stat line. Obviously Lakers versus Pelicans will happen Thursday in Vegas. That game is at 7:30 right after the Pacers game, guys. When you look at the Lakers, you look at the Suns. To me, the Suns are a top 4 team in the league, and the Lakers are kind of in the tier in which they could make some noise in terms of a Western Conference Finals appearance. However, I just think their age is going to restrict them. Where are you guys at? What tier are the Lakers for you guys? Do they pose a threat in the West, or are they kind of a team where it's like they could go far, but they're not beating a team like Denver or, Phoenix per se if they get that far?
I feel like it's not really a pyramid of ranks, but there are sections of teams this year. It's more, there are the top dogs, Celtics, Nuggets, Suns, powerhouse rosters that are built for a championship run this year and are just all around talented. Then there are teams that are well constructed, like the LA Clippers, the Golden State Warriors, LA Lakers, who are just a very veteran team and are another team just making a push. And then right under that is all these young teams coming into the league: Minnesota, Oklahoma City, Sacramento, who are knocking on the door of those teams. So it's really exciting, but I think that the Lakers are one of those teams that you can never count out LeBron, and what they have for depth around them is something that can be figured out. I mean, Austin Reeves, D'Angelo Russell, both very good players. Their depth, everyone wanted to go to LA this offseason. They were able to acquire Christian Wood late in the offseason before the season started, which is a huge rotational piece that any team would love to have. So it's really going to come down to which team molds the best in time for a playoff run. Because right now, as you like to say, Rob, is we can't measure a team before what's your rule? 25 games?
25, the 25 game rule. I think that's when you can officially have okay, this is where I think it's going to happen. This is what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, but there's just so many teams this year that you don't know what could happen with them. I mean, Golden State could pull off upsets. The Lakers can pull off upsets. These are just a lot of teams that are on their last legs. We don't know how much longer those guys have in the league. I would say most of their windows are and I don't want to undermine them, but we probably have 3 or at most 3 to 4 years of good basketball left out of players like Curry, Durant, and LeBron.
Right. So here's my problem with the Lakers. First of all, they have to be healthy. If they're healthy, I think they have as good as a shot as anyone not named the Denver Nuggets, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Phoenix Suns. I think they're in the tier right below them because that's when I think everything is just kind of the same out west. I like Sacramento. I do. It's just I don't think Sacramento can get past a team like Minnesota. I think the Lakers defense is suffocating, man. I think they play some really, really phenomenal defense, but I don't think LeBron James can put together a championship run anymore. And I think we saw it last year. He just the guy. I mean, it's no knock on him. I mean, the dude is just at a point of his career where it's like he can't be the best player on a championship team. Due to the fact that, you got to figure if you're winning the championship more times than not, especially with a team like the Lakers, who really are a defensive-minded team, those series are going to go 6 or 7 games. So you figure, round 1, you play 6 games against Memphis. Round 2, you played 6 games against the Warriors. That's 12 straight games for LeBron James. He just was gassed by the end of it in Denver. And then Denver, the younger, more, ready to go team is just, I think they're going to hit a point where Lakers versus the Suns, Lakers versus the Warriors, Lakers versus the Clippers. I like the Lakers because they're equal age, and the Suns do have Devin Booker, which I do think that plays a big factor in what the Suns' success comes out of. But I just think when you see teams, the younger teams, when the Lakers see the T-Wolves and the Kings and the Nuggets, and even I think the Pelicans, right? The Pelicans, if Zion stays healthy, they could be entering that category now, where it's like, listen, man, you're 100 games into the season, right? Literally, you're 100 games in by the Western Conference Finals. His legs aren't going to be there, and with this constructed roster, I still think he's the second best player, arguably the first. So for the Lakers, I like them, but I don't think they're real contenders. I think they're more just like sneaky, how far can they get in the playoffs category type of team.
I personally believe in the West. The Denver Nuggets, they're just up here. Like even the entire league, okay? Even the Celtics, who are highly touted as one of the better teams, if not the best team. Even with Jamal Murray being out, they were touted the best team. But I believe the Denver Nuggets are even above us because you just look at how Denver plays. They don't care about playing in transition. They really don't. And why? Because they have the best half-court offense in the entire league. And we kind of mentioned it earlier with the playoffs, where when you get into that playoff setting, the half-court is going to matter a lot more. And Denver, they have one of the most unbeatable two-man games in the game we've seen in 10 years. I mean, I shouldn't say 10 years because we saw Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson all on the same team with Draymond Green. But the Denver Nuggets, Jamal Murray and Jokic, that pairing, that offensive half-court pairing with the shooting weapons they have around them, it's just so, and cutting too. They have a lot of good cutters. It's just so unbeatable at this point in time. And we will see teams challenge them inevitably. But I almost feel like an injury has to happen for Denver not to make it to where I believe they're eventually going to peak again, which could happen. We did see Jamal Murray just get hurt, and Aaron Gordon a lot of guys could go down with injury, and it'd be a much different story. And if that is the case, somebody does go down in Denver, I think the Lakers are contenders, and here's why. The Suns, I think you would put them kind of second in the West. I
don't sleep on Minnesota.
A little bit of disrespect to Minnesota.
Don't sleep on Minnesota.
So Minnesota and Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City is a little too young, I would say at this point. A little too young. There's
year or two out.
Couple flaws in there that I think will probably drop them down a little bit in the standings. But the Suns and the Timberwolves, I put right there. The Suns offensively, they haven't had Beal yet. Minnesota defensively has been great. I think Minnesota, there's some flaws offensively there that aren't being talked about entirely yet, but we'll see as that goes on. But then I would definitely have the Lakers right there. They have LeBron. They have Anthony Davis. Now, when you have those two players, you're always going to have a chance. Particularly with Anthony Davis, we'd like to see him play harder, more consistently. And LeBron, I don't even need to say anything about LeBron. I mean, come on, 31, 11, and 8, 31, 8, and 11 last night. Just ridiculous.
It's just what he does.
I mean, you look at, there's not an NBA player, there's not a basketball player that compares to him. It's not even, I'm not calling him the greatest player of all time, but like, look how Jordan played, look how LeBron played. It's not even the same. Nobody plays like LeBron. It's just at a higher level. But the Lakers, they have LeBron and AD. Outside of them, their roster, I would say, is probably the most equipped it's been in the last couple of years to go on a run. We have not even seen Gabe Vincent with them yet. For what? Couple quarters, I don't even remember if he played a game or not.
He played opening Vincent, night. I know that.
Yeah, he might have gotten injured. He might have been injured that night. I mean, he literally played like 2 or 3 games. I mean, we're talking quarters, like barely even games, quarters he played for them. And I want to see him return into the lineup because with him, if you take him out of the lineup, there's no other ball handler but D'Angelo Russell and Max Christie. And then it's like, all right, well, what are we doing here? And I know LeBron runs point a lot too, but there's just not another ball handling presence there.
Can I ask you a question real quick, Seamus?
Yeah, go ahead.
So here's my question. So I agree with you. The depth is phenomenal, but do you think that potentially maybe they need a third guy, because you're asking injury prone AD, older LeBron, you're putting a lot of pressure on guys like Reeves and D'Lo in moments in the playoffs in which are they ready for?
And that's where I'm kind of getting to, because of their depth, I believe not only when a team has depth do they have the ability to slot certain guys in and play, better consistently, but I think they also have the trade chips to go out and make a move at the deadline, which to me would actually put them. Now, I don't want to say, because they could go out and make a terrible move and put themselves out of contention, but not only the fact they have LeBron, AD, and a deep roster, but they can maneuver with this roster, unlike rosters of the past that included, $44 million worth of Russell Westbrook nobody wanted. So I do believe this roster, you look at players like Max Christie, Taurean Prince, Cam Reddish, Rui Hachimura,
D'Lo is super.
You could even look at two guys I believe have tremendous trade value. I'm not sure if they would actually consider these guys, but they do have tremendous trade value, likely. D'Angelo Russell,
right?
Austin Reeves,
100%.
Both of those guys. Austin Reeves has been like, oh, he's the third star, he's third, whatever. No, he's not. He's not. I'm sorry. Austin Reeves.
He's Peyton Pritchard with opportunity.
I mean, I would say he's better than that because he's
bigger than Pritchard,
right?
Yeah, he's bigger than Pritchard.
But for real, it's not as if he is this crazy star. He does have some ability off the dribble and can make shots, but he's not going to go out there and be all right. Austin Reeves ISO. We feel completely comfortable with that. I think in his career, he's going to end up being more like a Kentavious Caldwell Pope type of player.
I agree. Bruce Brown in that category.
Right. He's not going to be your third star, but he's going to be a very, very good complementary starter or role player. And that's what he is with the Lakers right now. He's not a third star. But I do think the Lakers roster, I think it'll look a little bit different as the season progresses, because if they do slot into that 4th, 5th, 6th seed category, I think there is going to be some pressure with LeBron getting to the age in which he's getting to, almost in his 40s now. There's going to be some pressure to, sort of change this roster, flip around the roster at the deadline, especially with some of the pieces that you could move off the bench who aren't even playing right now. And I know there's not a ton of value. Christian Wood, too, is another guy. Jackson Hayes, those are guys I didn't even mention within that conversation. But I think the Lakers have a lot of leeway to compete in the Western Conference, especially with the landscape out there, because I think, too, a lot of teams around them have put themselves in positions where the Lakers can develop and potentially add on at the deadline, whereas Minnesota, Denver, Phoenix, they've gone all in with all of their assets for players like Rudy Gobert, Kevin Durant. Denver, of course, is just paying a bunch of dudes. Under those circumstances, I think the Lakers certainly have a chance.
Who do they go for, though? If you look at the market, all right, so you figure market comes around, right? You can kind of, at this point of the year, you kind of get a sense that whose names are going to be thrown around at the deadline. Names I think are going to be thrown around. DeMar DeRozan, most definitely, I think, will be moved by the deadline. Zach LaVine's name will be thrown around. Report came out, there's really no value there. That's not surprising. I think Pascal Siakam, name you're going to see thrown around there. Marcus Smart, I think, is a name that is going to be thrown around. I don't think he's going to be in Memphis anymore. And then Jerami Grant from Portland. So I think those are 5 guys in which, okay, well, you could see the Lakers improve, right? Marcus Smart, you could see, I'd hate that. God, I'd hate that as a Celtics fan. But, you could see the Lakers make a move. But then you think, all right, let's sit down and think about this, right? DeMar, trading, D'Lo, Rui in a pick for DeMar, does that make you better?
No.
I wouldn't do that. I would never do that.
Right. So Caruso's another guy who I really hope in Boston goes out and gets. I think Alex Caruso could potentially be the biggest, most important move in terms of who wins the NBA championship come the trade deadline. Because I think the defensive presence he makes, the abilities, how tradable that guy is. He's making what I believe $9 million a year. He almost fits in everyone's book to get Alex Caruso. I think where Caruso ends up, if he goes to a contender, which I think that's where he's going to get shipped off to. Don't sleep on him. But yeah, with the Lakers, it's just like you almost have to sacrifice depth if you want the third star. And then it's just like, are you really going to pull off a mid-season third star acquisition championship year? You just don't really see that. Maybe I'm just a Lakers, I'm being
I almost don't feel like, though, they need a third guy, more so just another body they believe in. Because, like, looking at the entirety of the roster, I always think in terms of, like, playoffs. Who do you actually believe in? Because I don't want to trash on our guys here in Boston, but there are some guys on the bench where they might play spot minutes with us
Hauser,
nowadays.
Pritchard. I don't believe in those guys.
Right. And it's like,
right?
you don't believe in those guys down the stretch in a playoff game. With the Lakers, it's like, who do you trust? Gabe Vincent, Russell, Reeves.
I don't trust
Davis,
D'Lo. I don't trust D'Lo.
LeBron.
I mean, you saw what he did last playoffs.
I trust Russell in the sense of he's a good playmaker, and if you can get him an open shot, I do feel confident in his shooting ability.
That's fair.
Whereas
That's
like
fair.
other guys, like I would feel more comfortable with, say, like D'Angelo Russell than Max Christie.
Yeah,
Max Christie,
100%. Right.
Put Schifino, Prince, Reddish, Hachimura,
Prince.
Vanderbilt, Wood,
Prince is
Hayes.
a name
I don't know
I
if I
could
trust
trust.
any of these guys.
Right.
I would trust the Lakers bench more than the Celtics bench. I might be a hot take, but I would take the Lakers bench any day of the week.
I think that's a great take. I think they have probably the best depth in the league. I just think, again, here's the Lakers' problem. Game 5, must-win game. You're down, Game 4, must-win game. You're down 2-1 in the deep month of May. Can LeBron have enough gas to do it for you? Because right now, with the constructed roster, it has to be LeBron. It could be AD, but I just don't believe in AD. He hasn't shown it to me in the past couple of years where it's like, all right, LeBron's not there. Anthony Davis, it's a 40-point night. I mean, you see it. To win a championship, your star players have to have that moment, that on the road, down 3-2, Game 6 explosion. We've seen LeBron do it. We've seen Jordan do it. We've seen Jokic do it. We saw Giannis do it with, I believe he had a 46-point outing in the finals. Steph Curry did it against Boston. Jason Tatum did it against Milwaukee. Jimmy Butler did it. It's just like, to get to the finals, you need that moment. And Seamus, you talked about it, right? It's that just performance where you're like, I have the star player says I have complete control over what's happening in the destiny of this series. I don't know if that guy is Anthony Davis. And if it's not, it can be LeBron, because we've seen it, LeBron James do it for 20 years in the NBA. But I just think LeBron's at an age where it's like, I don't think he can give you 45 points in a month, a late May game. It's just like, I just think his legs at some point are just gonna be like, oh God, I'm tired. Which is, again, it's no knock on the guy. I'm not bashing LeBron. It's just like, we saw it last year. So I feel like, as great, and it's a shame too. Well, really not, because a guy, a Boston fan, you really don't want LeBron winning more just because it kind of pisses you off. But I mean, he's got this could be one of the best constructed rosters LeBron has had since like that 2016 Cavs team, in terms of just like, it's a championship ready roster. It's just 5 years too late for Bron. I mean, if the dude had it, and the 2020 Lakers was a phenomenally constructed roster. But I mean, yeah, no, I think you nailed it in the roster sense, Seamus. It's just my problem with them is just like, who's going to be that guy, right? You're down, must-win game, because you're more times than not, you're down in a playoff series at some point. Can AD do it? Is AD really going to be the guy that gives them 40 points and just sucks the life out of the opposing team to jump forward and jolt yourself to the finish line? And I don't know.
Well, when it comes to AD, though, he technically has done it in the past. He did do it in the bubble. Now, I know it's a completely different circumstance, but
4 years ago now, almost. Damn.
Yeah,
still,
4 years.
But we have seen it that
he
can do it. It's just, is he going to do it?
Right.
Because it's possible that he can. It's just, when it comes down to it,
is it going to come out?
Is he going to get overpowered by a guy like Jokic again?
Right.
It's just kind of one of those things.
Or will he even be available? Is he going to even be on the court? And he's been pretty healthy recently. I mean, credit to him. He's had a phenomenal start to the year. Same with LeBron. LeBron's looked great so far. But I just think it's like, it's going to be interesting. And I think that's the great thing about the in-season tournament is what we're seeing. Are these questions you get to ask, and you see a team like the Lakers and the Pacers and the Pelicans even, who you didn't really think was going to be in the mix for the in-season tournament. But it raises questions, and it's fun because you're going to be like, okay, the New Orleans Pelicans who's in the Los Angeles Lakers, two teams who are very interesting. How are they going to play against each other? So I think that there's a lot to look forward to. And shout out to Adam Silver, guys. Come on, like what a great idea. This has been a whole lot of fun to watch. Even though we got robbed out of what would have been a phenomenal overtime against the Lakers and the Suns last night. I am mad about that, Adam Silver. However, guys, thank you so much for joining us and watching us on Around the Hardwood. This is the first episode, technically. We're going to be continuing doing this, and I'm going to say this again. If you're not following us on social media, everything's in the link down below. We're on the road to 1K on YouTube. Subscribe, guys. We're really grinding hard. We're on the road to 10K on Instagram. I'm Rob, my boy Ian, Seamus, Franco, guys, from all of us over here at Celtics Talk Weekly. We say thank you so much for all the support, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.